Supernatural Season 9, Episode 10, titled Road Trip. So, after Kevin's death, the beginning of this episode I really enjoyed because, it's somber. Both the beginning and the end of this episode were fairly somber. But the beginning, like the first thing I thought when I was watching the actual episode and not the recap, was like, how many times have they had to do this? Someone they know or someone they love, obviously, who becomes a part of their family or just has always been their family dies, either they're shot or they're possessed and they kind of sacrifice themselves, but, their body's left over, or, something like this happens where an angel who's possessing Sam actually kills someone. They always seem to, find themselves in this situation because that's just how the show is. Things have this really high peak of like, we're doing good, we're getting things done, we have a couple little problems here and there, but we're getting them in time, and then you know boom, it just drops and someone is killed or multiple people are killed sometimes. And this episode, it just starts off as like, and I love the fact that it was Dean by himself, and it's just him there alone, and they kind of carry that throughout this episode, which I really love. His kind of his emotional state where he does realize, or where he says himself by the end, I'm the reason Kevin's dead. That blood is never gonna wash off, and I have to basically solve this problem on my own because everyone who's around me gets killed. And Crowley tells him that, a couple of minutes after the beginning, and they kind of just keep with that theme, and they drop it in here and there, and I really love that. And it leads to the brothers kind of just splitting up again like they did a few seasons ago. And this time, who knows how it's going to play out. I mean, obviously, if you saw the promo, the first thing that happens, and I can't wait to see next week's episode, is that Dean actually ends up with Crowley. So that's without a doubt going to be a hilarious episode. But I think it'll also be a really good, story-driven episode now that, obviously Crowley is free. So I'm excited to see that. But some of the things they did in this episode were just really good. The episode as a whole, I really loved it. It's a great episode to come back in, from the mid-season finale. Excuse me. But, we got pretty much all the main characters who are alive. We got Crowley, we got Sam, obviously, we got Dean, we got Gadreel, who is now back in the first guy's body, which I'm really glad they did that too. Because for one, I figured at some point he'd be out of Sam, even when I thought he was a good guy, he has to leave Sam's body at some point. So he kind of has to go somewhere, and it just makes it better. It's just kind of cooler to go full circle, and it's like, oh, well, I'll go back to the last body I had. And also, I just like that guy as an actor. I thought he was a good actor. And if you saw like my premiere review of this season, I like that guy from the show Dollhouse. I thought he was a good actor in that. So I'm really glad they did actually bring him back to be a recurring actor in the show, because I think he's a good actor. And also, it just makes sense for the story just to have, instead of how they always, angels and demons can just go wherever they want to anybody, it's always better to have just one actor, because, we associate the face and the voice and all that stuff with that angel or demon in some cases. So it's cool to have that for multiple reasons where he's back in the show. But, they brought him back in. We got Abaddon in, and, obviously she's been kind of, making her way back up and trying to take over hell. And Crowley's finally out, and one of the things I love, which we really got to see in this episode, which isn't hard to figure out, you can really tell the differences between Abaddon and Crowley, just period, because you see how they act. But one of my favorite things was the contrast between how they reacted to the pretty demon, because obviously she didn't have a name. But when she's with Crowley, she mentions how she's working for both teams, and he's, when he says, it's good to have someone who's loyal, and she's just like, yep. And he's like, unless you're playing both sides, and she just says, wouldn't you? And then, she's fine after that, and Crowley's, his attitude is kind of like, well, I would, because that's how I am. I like to live, and I like to, play the game how it needs to be played so that I can be on the winning team. And, in Crowley's case, try to usurp whoever won. But, when she comes back into the show later, when Abaddon goes to see her, she's like, yeah, help Crowley out because I like to play both sides until someone wins. And then, of course, she corrected herself to say until you win. And she was like, isn't that smart? And Abaddon's like, no. And she kills her. And it's like, it just shows how ruthless she is compared to Crowley, where he's like, I'm serious about being the leader, but I'm not just gonna kill everybody off because I'd like to have people. In a weird way, he's kind of the hope type of guy, even though he's like trying to be the devil. So he's kind of like the happy devil compared to the devil in a sense. But I'm definitely excited to see them really have a fight, because when they introduced her, her motivation was to really be, the ruler of hell because, obviously she was like cast into the future. And it's like, well, all this crazy stuff has happened. The devil isn't really the devil anymore. So I can do whatever I want because I'm one of the strongest demons around. So, like, I really like that story where it's like, they have two different really powerful demons struggling to take over hell. And obviously, Metatron trying to recreate heaven, and now he has Gadreel, who's, killing off people left and right. And it's just really cool to have all these different aspects, which I really like. I know some people might find it like convoluted maybe, but I think so far it's really well done, and we're really getting into it now that Crowley is actually free because everyone's able to kind of go out and do what they want to do. And with Metatron and Gadreel, one of the things they did in this episode was they talk about Gadreel and like his best friend who was locked up with him, whose name of course I can't remember, but they mentioned in the beginning when he first kills like the sort of Justin Bieber type of character who was hilarious to me for the tiny bit he was alive. He mentions how that guy, used to torture him and his best friend, and he says like, yeah, I killed him and stuff, and so Gadriel's like, like I hate you for what you did to me, and also you killed my best friend. So he kills him, and then he finds out his friend's alive, and I thought that would lead into like a huge sort of subplot line, even if it was just this episode. But I really thought it would lead into sort of a new twist on the story where he'd actually kind of find a way to betray Metatron, and because this was his best friend, and it was kind of like he just killed him off, and I was like, well, that kind of sucks. There was sort of no remorse, but at the same time, he kind of got that from his own friend, where he says, every goal has a price, but if it's what you want, any price is worth it. And it's like, well, he literally, just killed himself off almost. Well, not literally, but obviously, he said the words that made his best friend kill him. And, he kind of just killed him off, and I was like, well, that kind of sucks because I was hoping it would have had a lot more of an emotional impact because this character who obviously has a huge emotional background, like he was the one who basically ruined the universe, as Cass put it, he's struggling, and that's why he's killing these people off, is so he can redeem himself. And I was hoping to see like how he was so upset when he first saw his friend was alive. I was like, I really think this is going to be a really good episode, and it still was, but not for the reason I was hoping for it, because I wanted to see him have this emotional struggle, even if he killed him off. But it was kind of just like, he's dead, and that's it. And I wish we could have had that expanded, if not through this episode, because obviously so much stuff happened. If, in the next episode where he's like, you have to like leave this body and kind of run away or something, and I'll like pretend to look for you or something like that. But, they didn't really have that struggle, and they probably just didn't have the time. Obviously, I'm not writing the show, so I don't know what happened. But he killed the guy off, and I was just hoping for a little bit more, out of that storyline. But I'm sure we'll have way more out of Gadreel anyway, because obviously now he's not inside of Sam, so we'll still get, Sam being Sam and then Gadreel being Gadreel. And I'm excited to see just where all these different storylines going. Like I said, with next week's episode, I'm really excited to see just how they do the whole Dean and Crowley scene. And also, Sam and Cass are together, so maybe they'll be hunting, and that'll be more of the side story of the episode, them trying to figure out, how do we continue on when obviously Dean feels like he has to do everything himself, and Sam's going to try to help, but of course he can't really do everything right now because he's still sick. And that might have been what he meant at the end of this episode, where he says, you can go, but, don't think you feeling like you're the problem is why I'm telling you to go, or me being mad is why I'm telling you to go. It probably is, because he knows he couldn't possibly stop him in his state. And even if he could, he knows that at some point Dean would just leave anyway, and then, once again, he wouldn't really be able to stop him. And of course, Cass wouldn't, even if he technically could, because he kind of, they each respect each other's choices, even if they kind of hate the choices. But overall, I love this episode. it had the good comedy, it had great elements in the story. We got the old guy back to play Gadreel. Metatron was in it for a tiny bit, but that wasn't really important. It was just to kind of send Gadreel back out. But really good episode. We got the major players, and I'm excited to see just where everything goes. Definitely not a lot of Angel stuff happening outside of the Gadreel thing and kind of showing Metatron. But obviously that's going to come back too. But excited for next week. Love this episode. So comment below. Let me know what you guys thought of this episode. Favorite parts, least favorite parts. I would ask who do you want to win, Crowley or Abaddon, but odds are it's mostly Crowley. But I'll ask it anyway. So if you want Abaddon to win, please put that below and definitely tell me why. But either way, comment below, let me know. And thanks for watching.